I remember seeing a film called The Gargantuas, I believe. And it was the good Gargantua and the bad Gargantua. At the end of it, the good Gargantua had to sacrifice himself to defeat the bad Gargantua and rid the world of evil.
War of the Gargantuas, a 1966 Japanese kaiju film directed by Ishirō Honda, may initially appear to just be a typical kaiju film filled with spectacular battles and destruction. However, beneath its surface lies a surprisingly deep exploration of fraternal conflict and tragedy. Granted, it may not be too surprising, as it's the same creative team that made the original Godzilla film, and it shows. The film starts with this fantastic cold open where a giant octopus attacks a fishing vessel. The way everything builds up to this first attack is absolutely genius. When you see a kaiju film start out with a fishing boat out on the water, you kind of know what's about to go down. And while you would expect the scene to just end with the ship being destroyed by the giant octopus, it turns out that the octopus isn't even the biggest threat to the fishermen. Out of nowhere, a huge hairy monster appears and takes care of the octopus. Now, you might be thinking, this new monster is there to protect the boat. But in a very shocking twist, the monster then attacks the boat, and it leaves one survivor in the wreckage. After being rescued, the survivor tells the police and the press that Frankenstein had attacked the boat. For context, War of the Gargantuas is a very loose sequel to Frankenstein Conquers the World, or Frankenstein vs. Baragon, depending on which version. This film implies that a descendant of Frankenstein was created from its cells, and this offspring ended up in the care of Dr. Paul Stewart, who observed it for scientific purposes for 5 years. Dr. Stewart denies that the Frankenstein he once took care of was responsible for destroying the fishing vessel, since it was peaceful. It loved humans. Afterwards, another fishing boat falls victim to an attack, while villagers spot the Green Frankenstein off the coast. A few days later, the Green Frankenstein, now dubbed Gyra, assaults an airport. In a very shocking scene, he eats a woman and spits out her shredded clothes before retreating to the sea. How many times have we seen someone get eaten in a Toho film? Sure, it's happened now and then, but most of the fatalities are just a result of the chaos and destruction. It raises the stakes tenfold here, knowing that Gyra outright hates humans and will purposely go after them. Later on, we're introduced to a light brown colored Frankenstein named Sanda, who is revealed to be the brother of Gyra. Sanda was the Frankenstein offspring that grew up in Dr. Stewart's lab. As a result, Sanda loves humans and would never hurt them. Meanwhile, his brother, Gyra, grew up in the ocean. Having never felt any love or affection, Gyra resorted to being cruel and animalistic to survive in the ocean depths. While at first Sanda tries to protect his brother, he soon realizes that Gyra has been eating humans, and this is where the conflict of the film really kicks in. Sanda tries to plead with his brother to stop eating humans, but to no avail, so a massive battle occurs in Tokyo's heart, and eventually Tokyo Bay. Suddenly, Mother Nature ends the conflict when a giant underwater volcano consumes the two brothers, as they both die fighting amongst each other. At its core, War of the Gargantuas is a Shakespearean tragedy. This may sound like a wild take, considering it's just a giant kaiju film, but hear me out for a second. Sanda and Gyra embody the archetypal Shakespearean trope of sibling rivalry. The dichotomy between the two brothers is stark. Sanda represents benevolence and compassion, while Gyra embodies aggression and malevolence. The dichotomy mirrors Shakespearean characters like Hamlet, who is contrasted with his evil Uncle Claudius in Hamlet. The inherent conflict between Sanda and Gyra drives the narrative forward, which culminates in a tragic confrontation that seals both of their fates. Furthermore, the film explores identity and self-discovery, which is a quintessential element of Shakespearean tragedy. Dr. Paul Stewart's quest to unravel the mystery behind the Gargantua's origins mirrors the existential journeys that are undertaken by Shakespearean protagonists. His relentless pursuit of truth leads him to confront uncomfortable realities about the nature of the Gargantuas, which echoes the existential crisis faced by characters like Hamlet or Macbeth as they grapple with their identities and destinies. Kaijus, by their very nature, exist as solitary beings. They are often portrayed as the only one of their kind, towering over the human populace with no equals in sight. This inherent uniqueness sets them apart. It creates this sense of isolation that pervades their existence. Unlike humans who thrive in communities and seek connection with others, kaijus are destined to wander alone, devoid of companionship or understanding. Sanda is lucky enough to discover that he has a brother who is very much like him. Before meeting Gaira, he was living in the Japanese Alps in solitude. Once he meets his brother, he begins caring for and protecting him. He acts as a guardian and a friend. You get the feeling that his days of being alone are over, but of course, you know that won't actually come to fruition. Of course, once Sanda discovers that his brother has been eating humans, that friendship is dead in the water. Pun intended. War of the Gargantuas also examines the moral ambiguity inherent in the human condition, another hallmark that is very much present in Shakespearean tragedies. The film blurs the lines between heroism and villainy, challenging the audience's perception of morality. Sure, Gaira eats humans, and that on paper is evil. I'm not defending the consumption of humans. However, it's all he knows. It's like getting mad at a lion for eating a gazelle, or getting mad at my dog Ava for eating spaghetti. Despite the noble intentions, Sanda is forced to confront the dark reality of his brother's actions, leading to a tragic realization of the differences between them. This moral ambiguity is reminiscent of Shakespearean characters like Macbeth, whose noble aspirations are tainted by ambition and moral compromise, which leads to his downfall. The climax of the film, characterized by the explosive battle between Sanda and Gaira, epitomizes the tragic inevitability that pervades Shakespearean tragedy. Despite Sanda's valiant efforts to reason with his brother, Gaira's savagery is irreversible, symbolizing the futility of defying fate. The brothers' tragic demise amidst the chaos of battle underscores the inherent fragility of existence, echoing the tragic conclusions of Shakespeare's most iconic works, like Romeo and Juliet. Okay, look, I've probably alienated most of my audience here. You probably didn't expect to hear me talk about the works of Shakespeare in a video about War of the Gargantuas, but it's very relevant when analyzing the film. Plus, I've been dying to talk about Shakespeare on this channel, given the fact that I was a theater kid throughout all of high school.
Or a gig with a sting, or a stare to the sky.
But let's move away from Shakespeare and go more or less into the realm of psychology. Sanda and Gaira are textbook examples of nature versus nurture. While they both share a common origin, their paths diverge drastically. It highlights the subtle theme of nature versus nurture. As Gaira embodies aggression and chaos, he's driven by primal instincts and a thirst for human flesh. In contrast, Sanda exhibits compassion and restraint, reflecting a more civilized and empathetic nature. The film explores the notion of identity and the impact of upbringing on individual behavior. Despite sharing genetic similarities, Gaira and Sanda develop distinct personalities due to their divergent life experiences. Gaira's upbringing in the wild, devoid of human influence, shapes him into a relentless predator, whereas Sanda's exposure to human kindness instills a sense of empathy and morality in him. The conflict between Gaira and Sanda also transcends physical confrontation. The entire film showcases a battle of ideologies, a clash between right and wrong. A lot of kaiju films showcase this fight between two beings as a battle for supremacy, a fight to determine who is the strongest, who is the alpha. That's not the case here. It isn't a fight to see who is the strongest brother. It's a fight between good and evil. And that's what makes the film so great. If you haven't seen this movie yet, then I recommend checking it out. As of me writing and filming this video, it's available on HBO Max. That probably won't age well. I'm sure in 5 years you won't even know what an HBO Max is, but regardless, it's been a while since there was a physical release of this film widely available here in North America. The DVD is insanely expensive, and I really wish that Criterion would get the rights to make a Blu-ray for this, because that would be so awesome. With that out of the way, I'm Cole McCormick, and you're watching Firewood Media. If you like what you just saw, we have tons of other kaiju-related videos on the channel, as well as original films and music videos, and even non-kaiju video essays just like these. Thank you so much for watching.
It's my 2-year-old daughter's favorite movie. She's obsessed with it. She's the green Gargantua, and my other son is the brown one, and she loves being the bad green Gargantua. I mean, she's obsessed with it, and as I was. I don't know, I grew up watching Japanese science fiction movies. And well, there's also something too with the way these two fight in the city in this kind of like monster smackdown, where it's like buildings are going, but it's kind of a struggle between two gargantuas. You know, there's an emotional story to it that's quite strong.
And